4 years, Sarah had moved quietly through the machinery of her parents' perfectly curated world or place where her mother's charming hospitality hid razor-edge judgments and her father's generosity came stamped with invisible contracts. But everything shifted on Thanksgiving night when her 10-year-old son was publicly denied dessert as punishment for simply existing outside their script. A small humiliation that cracked open decades of obedience she had taught herself to swallow. Walking Noah into the cold, she realized the text her father sent later, "Transfer the mortgage tomorrow," wasn't a reminder, but a command meant to pull her back into his orbit, the same orbit she had been edging away from since her divorce. Instead of obeying, she opened her laptop and began tracking every strand of control they'd woven into her life. The trust fund, the mortgage, the co-sign lake house she'd forgotten she technically owned, all the subtle financial ropes she once mistook for kindness. When her brother Jason arrived the next morning, guilty, shaken, but no longer blind, they decided together to cut every shared financial tether, pushing the family attorney to separate her from the trust and expose the lake house lie. Her parents responded with their usual tactics: guilt, threats disguised as concern, and a surprise birthday party staged online to regain their image. But Jason confronted them publicly, shattering the performance they'd built their lives around. When they later appeared at her door, asking for a way back, she saw clearly that their apologies were simply another negotiation, another transaction meant to restore authority. She refused, closing the door as gently as she'd once closed her own heart to them. In the days that followed, as the trust split became official and their calls turned into empty rings, her home filled with the kind of warmth that had never existed in the Caldwell household. Noah laughing in the kitchen as they baked cookies, Jason's family offering uncomplicated company, silence settling through her house like a healing balm, and sitting on her porch with a cup of tea, surrounded by the ordinary peace they'd spent years trying to convince her she didn't deserve. She finally understood that breaking away from them wasn't destruction, it was liberation. The moment she stopped confusing control for love and reclaimed her life one breath at a time, winter deepened quietly around Sarah's house. The kind of cold that sharpened sound, where even the crunch of snow under boots felt like punctuation. For a few weeks, life settled into a gentler rhythm. Noah's laughter in the kitchen, peaceful dinners with Jason's family, evenings spent learning how silence sounded without someone else's expectations weighing it down. But peace, she learned, doesn't mean the past disappears. It just waits for its next opening. It arrived one chilly Thursday morning in the form of a thick envelope shoved halfway into her mailbox. Her name typed in bold letters she recognized immediately as her father's doing. Inside was a formal notice. Her parents were filing to reclaim full ownership of the lake house, arguing she had signed it in error years earlier. A note paperclip to the front, in her mother's looping script, read, "We can resolve this privately if you're willing to be reasonable." Sarah laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because the pattern was so familiar it almost felt scripted. She sent the documents to Jason, who called within minutes, fury simmering in his voice. "They're trying to scare you," he said. "They're losing control and grasping at whatever's left." But Sarah wasn't afraid. Something inside her had crystallized, something hard, clear, unbreakable. She contacted a lawyer of her own, not the family's longtime puppet, a woman named Marisol Reyes, who listened to the whole story without interruption, her eyes sharp with understanding. When Sarah finished, Marisol leaned back and said, "This isn't about property. This is about ownership of you. We'll respond on your terms." The next weeks became a slow-moving war. Her parents sent emails under the guise of protecting family assets. They claimed sentimentality, misunderstanding, even attempted nostalgia, old photos, childhood stories, invitations to talk things out. They played every angle except the truth, that they couldn't stand a version of Sarah who didn't need them. And then came the message she'd quietly expected, her mother asking to see Noah for the sake of family unity. Sarah didn't respond, not because she was cruel, but because she finally understood what protection actually looked like. No, I had started to ask fewer questions about holidays, about grandparents, about why kindness was rationed like scarce currency. He smiled more, slept deeper, drew pictures of their house with wider windows and brighter suns. Healing was happening in small, steady ways. One afternoon in February, as the lake house dispute escalated, Jason knocked on her door carrying 2 coffee cups and a face full of exhaustion. "They ambushed me today," he said, stepping inside. "Cornered me at their place. Said I'd been manipulated. Said you've turned me against them." He set the coffees down with a sigh. "It's like they can't imagine we chose peace on purpose." They sat on the couch, the quiet between them comfortable. "You know what Mom said?" he continued. "If we lose the lake house, we lose our retirement." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "They don't even live there." "Exactly," Jason said. "They love simples more than people." They talked for hours about childhood, about patterns that had once felt normal, about the strange relief of finally seeing the truth without flinching. For the first time, Jason admitted he'd stayed silent all those years because he thought he had to keep the family from collapsing. "Turns out," he said softly, "it was already collapsing. We were just pretending it wasn't." As spring edged closer, the legal process neared its final stages. Sarah's lawyer recommended mediation, though privately she warned that her parents would likely refuse anything that required admitting fault. The meeting was scheduled in a neutral downtown office, a glass-walled conference room overlooking the river. Sarah arrived early, her spine steady, her breath even. Jason sat beside her, a quiet anchor. When their parents entered, her mother's eyes were glossy with performative hurt, her father's jaw locked in righteous indignation. They sat across the table like guests at a funeral mourning not the relationship, but the control they'd lost. Their lawyer spoke first, presenting their claim, laced with phrases like misunderstanding, family intent, and emotional impulsivity. Marisol waited until they finished. Then she pushed forward a folder containing documentation proving Sarah had never signed away her share, had never been informed of their leases, had never been given her rightful earnings. When she finished, the room grew still. Her father's face drained of color. Her mother stared at the tabletop, fingers trembling. For the first time, Sarah saw something she'd never expected. Fear not of losing property, but of losing their narrative. Marisol ended the meeting with simple clarity. "We propose a full, clean severance. Property divided. No future claims. No contact unless initiated by my client." Her parents were silent, the kind of silence that comes from realizing the performance is over and the audience has walked out. Sarah felt no triumph, only release, like loosening a knot she'd been tied into since childhood. That evening, she and Noah made grilled cheese sandwiches and ate on the living room floor. He told her about school, about a science project, about a friend who shared snacks with him. He didn't ask about his grandparents. He didn't need to. After he went to bed, Sarah stepped onto the porch. The night air mild for the first time in months. She felt something unexpected rise in her chest, not regret, not anger, but gratitude for the life she was building from the quiet outward. No more testing, no more proving, no more shrinking dots somewhere across town. Her parents were probably replaying the meeting, rewriting the story, casting themselves as victims in a narrative they no longer controlled. But that was their world to manage, not hers. For the first time, Sarah felt her life was entirely her own, a house full of laughter, boundaries made of steel instead of apologies, a brother finally free, and a son growing up in a home where love wasn't currency. And as she stood beneath the soft glow of the porch light, she realized part 2 wasn't about fighting them, it was about outgrowing them. Spring arrived like a slow exhale, the thought creeping in day by day as though the world itself was loosening the grip winter had kept around everything. By April, the mediation ruling finally landed. The lake house would be formally divided, Sarah's share acknowledged and protected, and all financial ties with her parents dissolved permanently. The judge's decision came sealed in a plain envelope, almost too ordinary for something that carried so much weight. When she held it, Sarah felt no shock, no burst of emotion, just a gentle, settling calm, like a body finally learning how to rest after years of bracing for impact. Life didn't transform overnight. It simply became realer. Noah had grown steadier these past months. He smiled without looking round for permission, laughed without waiting for the room to approve. One evening, he came home proudly waving a permission slip for a school art showcase. "Can you come?" he asked, as though the answer could be anything but yes. The artwork he planned to display was a watercolor painting of their home, bright blues and yellows, little stars over the roof, a tiny figure in the window. "That's me," he said. "I'm reading." He didn't paint grandparents. He didn't paint a big fancy dining room. He painted peace. Still, the past had a way of knocking even when it wasn't invited. One cool Sunday in May, Sarah and Noah were at the local farmer's market, choosing strawberries. When she felt someone watching her, she turned and saw her mother standing several booths away, hands clasped in front of her like she was posing for a portrait that no one was taking. A lean smile flickered, then vanished. She didn't walk over, she waited for Sarah to come to her, the way she always had. But Sarah didn't move. She simply met her mother's eyes, calm and unflinching, and returned to helping Noah weigh a bag of cherries. Eventually, Elaine drifted away like someone who finally realized the audience had left. That night, Sarah expected some kind of message and email, a guilt-soaked voicemail, maybe even legal noise. But her phone stayed silent. It wasn't peace. It was surrender, a different kind of quiet than she'd ever known. By early summer, Jason had become a constant presence, not out of obligation, but out of something gentler, something almost like siblinghood. Ray learned. One evening, he showed up with pizza and a grin. "Mom and Dad want to meet with me," he said. "Apparently, they think there's still damage control to be done." He rolled his eyes. "They don't get it. There's nothing left to repair." He paused. "Except maybe us." They talked long after Noah went to bed, their conversation drifting from childhood memories to future plans, camping with the kids, trips, holidays free of judgment. For the first time, family didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a small circle built from choice. But the real test came in July. A certified letter arrived for Sarah, addressed from her parents' attorney. She stared at it on the kitchen counter, the weight of old reflexes tugging at her chest, the instinct to brace, to anticipate harm, to prepare a defense before she even knew the contents. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, expecting threats, accusations, one last attempt to pull her into their orbit. Instead, inside was a single-page statement. "Victor and Elaine Caldwell are withdrawing all future claims. They acknowledge the finality of the settlement. They will make no further contact unless received first. No signature from either parent. Just legal closure. Cold and neat. She read it twice. Then again, waiting for the familiar sting of guilt or confusion or some echo of grief. But none came. What she felt instead was the absence of their gravity, a lightness where heaviness used to live, a quiet that didn't feel empty but spacious. That evening, she and Noah went for a walk by the lake, the water shimmering under a fading pink sky. He held her hand loosely, swinging it back and forth as children do when they feel safe. "Mom," he asked, "are we done with all that stuff?" She squeezed his hand gently. "Yeah, sweetheart," she said. "We're done." He nodded, satisfied, then broke into a run toward the edge of the dock, calling for her to watch him skip stones. She stood there, watching her son's laughter ricochet across the water, and a realization settled into her with the same certainty as the tide. She had become the kind of mother she always wished she'd had. Not perfect, not polished, but present, loving without conditions, and louder than the ghosts of the people who had tried to shape her into silence. Later that night, after Noah fell asleep, Sarah stepped onto the porch, again the same place where she'd once stood, feeling the first hints of freedom. Fireflies blinked across the yard, tiny lights weaving through the dark like reminders that brightness didn't need permission to exist. She breathed in slowly, deeply, the air warm and familiar. Her phone buzzed once on the railing. A text from Jason. "Next holiday, our house. No drama, just us." Sarah smiled, typing back, "Finally sounds like a family." And as she slipped back inside, the door closing softly behind her, she understood that the real story wasn't about what she left behind, but what she was finally stepping into. A life without performance. A life without fear. A life that was hers. August arrived warm and humming. The kind of summer that softened edges and made even old scars feel a little less sharp. By now, Sarah's home felt entirely like hers. Sun-drenched mornings, evenings filled with quiet routines, a life that didn't feel borrowed or bargained for. The lake house settlement had gone through. Her parents had backed away publicly. The silence had settled, but not like a threat, more like a pause. Yet, as any survivor of a controlling family knows, silence from the people who once tried to control you never comes without a shadow. That shadow appeared on a Tuesday. Sarah was in the backyard with Noah, helping him practice for his school's fall soccer tryouts. He kicked the ball too hard, laughing as it rolled all the way to the fence. When she jogged to retrieve it, she saw a black SUV parked down the street, idle, engine running. Not unusual, but the timing prickled the back of her neck. The next morning, it was there again. Different spot, same make, same driver, an older man with sunglasses, face unreadable. She dismissed it the first time, not the second. By the fourth morning, it was obvious. Someone was watching her house. She took a photo and sent it to Jason. He called immediately. "Don't panic," he said, though his voice betrayed tension. "I'll come over." He arrived within 10 minutes, still wearing his work badge. He studied the photo, then looked toward her street, jaw tightening. "I know that car," he said quietly. "It's one of Dad's business consultants, the same man he used when he wanted background checks on people." Sarah's stomach dropped, not with fear, but with recognition. Her parents had lost control of the money. Now they were digging for something else. "They're looking for a weakness," Jason said. "They think if they can't pull you back in legally, they can find something personal." She shook her head. "What could they possibly find?" "Anything," Jason said. "A missed payment, an old debt, something with your ex, even gossip." The realization settled, cold and unwanted. Her parents were done negotiating. They were now investigating. That evening, Sarah contacted her lawyer, who responded fiercely. "They're likely gathering information to challenge your share of the lake house revenue or to undermine you for future leverage. Keep documenting. Keep everything." Sarah went to bed that night with a knot in her stomach, not fear, but anger that the reach still lingered like a stain she hadn't invited. The next day, she took Noah to a community event at the park. Local vendors, music, popsicles. He raced off to play with a friend while she browsed a crafts booth. That's when she heard the voice. "Sarah." She turned. Her father stood there, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than she remembered, but only physically. His eyes still carried that calculating squint, the one that measured people instead of seeing them. "I didn't want to do this at home," he said. "Thought it would be better here." "Neutral ground?" "There's no neutral ground with you," Sarah replied calmly. He ignored that. "Your mother is struggling. We thought you might reconsider the separation." "There's nothing to reconsider." He stepped closer. "This family is breaking because of you." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shake. She just looked at him the way someone looks at a stranger who happens to share their blood. "No," she said. "This family is breaking because of the lies you built it on." Something flickered across his face, anger trying to disguise itself as disappointment. "You think you're protecting Noah," he said. "But children need structure." "My son has structure," she replied. "Just not chains." He opened his mouth again, but stopped when a small voice called, "Mom." Noah ran toward her, holding a painted rock he'd won at the craft table. He took one look at Victor and instinctively stepped closer to her. That shift, small but unmistakable, destroyed any illusion her father had left. Victor cleared his throat. "You're making a mistake." Sarah placed a hand gently on Noah's shoulder. "I already made plenty," she said. "But staying under your control won't be one of them." He stared at her for a long moment, searching for the version of her he used to command. When he didn't find her, he finally left, walking away so slowly it was almost dramatic. When he was gone, Noah looked up. "Was he mad at you?" "No," she said, kneeling to his height. He's mad at himself. He just doesn't know how to say it. They drove home quietly. That night, Sarah sat on the porch again, her ritual place. Jason texted, "He confronted you, didn't he?" "I'm sorry," she replied. "It's okay. He can't break anything anymore." For the first time since she broke away from her parents, Sarah realized something profound. The quiet wasn't their absence anymore. It was her presence. The watching SUV never returned. No more letters. No more messages. Just life uncomplicated and observed. Unapologetically hers. Autumn arrived early that year, rolling in with crisp mornings and the scent of wood smoke drifting across the neighborhood. The leaves turned fast, burning gold, rust, and crimson, like the world was shedding a layer it no longer needed. Sarah felt the same. Her life had pared itself down to what mattered: Noah, her home, her own choices, and the small circle that actually loved without conditions. By October, the lake house revenue finally hit her account, her rightful share, the one her parents had tried to hide for years. Jason texted her a celebratory emoji, followed by, "Dad's furious. Mom's pretending she's above it." Sarah replied with a simple, "Let them be." She didn't need revenge. She needed distance, and she finally had both. But life has a way of testing every new boundary. It happened on a Wednesday evening. She was cleaning up after dinner, Noah humming in the living room, while drawing planets, when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Is this Sarah Caldwell?" A woman asked. "Yes, this is Rose Martin. I'm your mother's neighbor." Sarah froze. "Your mother Elaine was taken to the hospital this afternoon. There was an ambulance. I thought you should know." The voice was gentle, hesitant, as though aware she was stepping into a place she didn't fully understand. "What happened?" Sarah asked, but her tone wasn't panicked. It was steady, controlled. "I'm not sure." She collapsed in her driveway. Victor went with her. Sarah thanked her, hung up, and stood there, hands still wet from dishwater. Heart not racing, just awake. The old version of her would have grabbed her keys immediately, rushed to the hospital, apologized for every boundary she'd ever set. But that version wasn't alive anymore. She texted Jason. Within seconds, he replied, "I'm on the way there. You don't need to come. I'll update you." Sarah dried her hands. Noah looked up from his drawings. "Mom, you okay?" She sat beside him, smoothing his hair. "I'm okay," she said. "We're okay, and our past." Then too, finally, Jason called. "She's stable," he said. "Not life-threatening. She fainted from stress, dehydration, maybe a panic attack. Doctors don't know yet." "Dad's being dad," he exhaled. "He asked where you were, and you told him." She asked. "I told him you weren't coming." Silence. Not cold, just full. "He said it was your fault." Jason added, "That everything has been your fault." Sarah didn't flinch. "And what did you say?" He hesitated. She pictured him running a hand through his hair, the way he did when he was done being the good son. "I told him it wasn't your fault," he said quietly. "I told him it was his." Sarah closed her eyes, not in pain, but in a strange, unexpected relief. It was the first time her brother had ever said those words out loud. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Sarah sat alone in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She thought about her mother, about the woman who had weaponized kindness, withheld affection, staged holidays like performances, but also about the woman beneath all that scaffolding, the woman who had never learned how to love without control, the woman whose entire life was built on appearances fragile enough to crack. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel guilt. She felt human. The next day, Jason stopped by after work. He looked tired, worn down by complicated loyalties. "They're asking if you'll visit her," he said. "And what did you tell them?" "That I'd ask you." Sarah leaned against the counter. "Do you think I should?" Jason didn't answer immediately. He looked at her with the kind of honesty that only comes after both people have walked through fire. "I think," he said slowly, "you should do whatever doesn't wound you." She exhaled. That was news. Someone asking her to protect herself. 2 days passed. Her mother was released. No messages came, not even a manipulative one. The silence grew thicker, not threatening, but heavy with something unsaid. Then, on Sunday morning, a small, cream-color envelope appeared on her porch. No knock, no footsteps, just the envelope, placed neatly beside the doormat. Her name, handwritten in her mother's cursive. She hesitated before opening it. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The handwriting was shaky and steady, the handwriting of someone unused to vulnerability. Sarah, I don't know how to speak to you anymore without hurting you. I don't know how to be soft without feeling weak. I don't expect forgiveness, but tell Noah I'm sorry. Mom, no excuses, no conditions, no demands. Just that. Sarah sat on the porch steps, staring at the letter. Her heart didn't break. It didn't soften. It simply widened, making space for a truth she had resisted for years. Some people can love you deeply and still love you poorly. Some wounds aren't meant to be reopened, and some closures come without reconciliation. She folded the letter gently and placed it back in the envelope. When Noah came downstairs later, she smiled at him, not sad, not conflicted. Just sure, want pancakes? She asked. He nodded eagerly. And that was the moment Sarah understood the deepest inheritance she could give him. Winter returned a year later, soft and steady, the kind that hushed the world instead of hardening it. Snow gathered quietly on rooftops and front porches, settling into the cracks and corners of Sarah's life like a reminder that even cold seasons could be tender. Life had not become perfect. It had become real. The lake house was sold in early December. The profits wired evenly, Sarah's portion significant enough to give her a future her parents never intended for her to have. Jason closed his accounts with Victor and Elaine too. He and Sarah had formed a small, solid family between their two houses, their children running back and forth like the world itself had expanded just for them. Her parents never attempted another legal move. No unexpected SUVs, no manipulations, just distance. Her mother sent one more letter in late spring, short, unadorned, a thank you for a birthday card Jason had delivered on behalf of the grandchildren. It did not ask for anything. It did not pretend the past hadn't happened. It simply acknowledged the life that now existed between them. Separate, quiet, unforced, and that was enough. By the time Christmas approached, Sarah stood at the kitchen counter rolling dough with Noah, whose hands were floured up to his wrists, his laughter warm and unburdened. He was taller now, bolder, his shoulders no longer rounded the way they once were when he expected to be judged. He had become a child allowed to grow in every direction, not just the ones that pleased a room. Look, he said proudly, holding up a crooked star cookie. This one's yours. She smiled. It's perfect. He grinned, the same grin he'd had before the Thanksgiving that had changed everything, but brighter now, like he finally believed he deserved sweetness. Later that evening, they walked to Jason's house for their first annual real family holiday dinner. No silverware polished for display, no performances, no unspoken rules, just mismatched plates, laughter bouncing off the walls, burnt rules no one complained about, and a warmth that grew without supervision. After dinner, while the kids built a blanket fort in the living room, Jason stepped outside with her. Snow drifted lightly, the world muted and peaceful. You did it, you know, he said quietly. Did what? Broke the whole damn cycle. She looked out at the trees, bare and honest. We did it, she corrected him. No, he said, shaking his head. I followed you. You were brave first. Sarah didn't argue. Some truths don't need to be softened. On the walk home, Noah slipped his hand into hers. Mom, he asked, do you think Grandma and Grandpa miss us? She thought about that, really thought about it. About control, about choices, about distance that protects instead of punishes. I think, she said carefully, they miss the version of us they could control. But the real us, the us we are now, I don't know if they ever knew how to love that. Noah nodded slowly. The way children do when they understand more than people expect. I like this life better. So do I, she whispered. They reached their house, warm light glowing through the windows, snow soft on the roof. Inside, the room smelled like cinnamon and pine, and laughter still lingered in the air. Sarah closed the door behind them and felt the familiar settling of peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on pleasing anyone. The kind that grows from boundaries and bravery and choosing yourself without apology. She tucked Noah into bed, turned off the lights, stood for a moment in the quiet, and then she realized something profound, something simple, something final. This was the family she built, not the one she escaped. This was the ending she earned, not the one she was given. And for the first time in her life, the story was hers.